Hi, welcome back to Special Educators Summer Series. This is week 2. I'm Jennifer from Positively Learning. I'm going to be here every week of the summer. We're going to be talking about building an independent work system that actually works. So be sure to hit subscribe, Positively Learning on YouTube. I'll be here every Wednesday, and you can also catch the replay. Now, if you missed last week, that was the foundation episode. We covered why independent work keeps falling apart in the first place. And it also set up everything we're going to be doing throughout the series. So I highly recommend going back and watching that one if you haven't yet. But if you're here and you're ready, let's get into week 2. Today, we're going to be talking about the tasks framework. We're going to be referring to this as we start the steps to build your independent work system so that students can work independently and you, as the teacher, can pull small groups. We're going to be starting with letter T, which stands for Think It Through. Now, I want to tell you what it means, but more importantly, I want to talk about what teachers often skip over. So, what usually happens when a teacher decides that an independent work system sounds like an amazing idea for their classroom? Maybe they saw it next door in the classroom, or they saw it online and they thought, that is exactly what my students would benefit from. So maybe they sit down and they open TPT, or they scroll Instagram, or maybe they're on YouTube, or maybe they remember something that they bookmarked months ago. And then they start downloading tasks. And there is nothing wrong with that. Those resources exist for a reason, and a lot of them are really good. But the problem is with starting there. Because what happens is you end up with this big collection, but you don't have a system. You might have a file folder from one place, a task box from another, maybe a matching activity that you made yourself, but none of it actually connects. And the formats might be slightly different, or the difficulty levels don't match. And maybe the visual presentations look different every time a student sits down to use it. So now your students, especially students who benefit from keeping things very predictable, they might struggle to work independently or to build that routine around something that looks different every single day. So independent work ends up falling apart again, not because you chose bad resources, but because there was no plan before choosing the resources. Now, you might say, I already have a plan in mind. And maybe it is something that you did see next door in a classroom or online. Maybe it's a shelf, a cart, a bin. It's organized and labeled. Tasks are going to be there for students to use while you are pulling a small group. And I will say that is a great plan. And I think it's a very doable plan, but it actually should be referred to as maybe a goal of what we're going to be doing together this summer. But what made that plan possible wasn't getting the perfect tasks, going on a shopping trip for materials, and prepping it all. It was a planning decision. Behind every effective independent work system is someone who sat down and asked, what do I actually want my students to be doing during this time? That is the question. What do I actually want students to be doing? That is the whole point of Think It Through. So let's talk about it. How to actually think this through. And I'm not going to tell you to make this big list, and we're going to call it planning. Instead, there are 5 questions that are going to walk you through how to align those perfect tasks before we even think about setting anything up. Here are the 5 questions. Number 1, what IEP goals need practice right now? Not general skill areas, but specific goals, the ones on paper, the ones your students are actually working towards. Independent work is one of the best ways to build those practice reps into the day without using instructional time. But it's only going to work if the task connects to real goals. Question number 2, what academic skills need reinforcement? Not new instruction, but just reinforcement. Things your students do need more reps with. Independent work is not a good time for introducing new content, but it can be an excellent time for building fluency with things that they've already been introduced to and they mostly understand. Question 3, what life or functional skills matter most right now? This is the one that often gets skipped, especially at the elementary level. But for a lot of students, the most meaningful independent work isn't going to be a worksheet. It's going to be a functional task. Sorting, matching, simple vocational activities, tasks that build towards real independence. Question 4 is so important. What can students almost do independently? That is such a big one. We want independent work to be at students' independent level, but we have to find that sweet spot. Of course, we don't want it to be hard. It's not at the student's frustrational threshold, it's not at their instructional level, it's their independent level. But we also don't want it to be too boring. We want tasks that students can start, they can push through, and they can get to the finish without depending on you. Question 5. What would give students a quick win? This is also one that I just feel like we are just not talking about enough. Confidence is a system component. Students who experience success during independent work are more likely to come back to it. Students who struggle and they need help every time, they're either going to learn that independent work means waiting on you, the teacher, or they're going to be thinking, this is not worth the risk. I'm not willing to risk this, not knowing what to do. And of course, we want them to learn the opposite. Quick case study, because as a special educator, we love our case studies. One teacher in the Taskbox Club described this shift. Previously, she had students that were never really completing independent work without having to constantly prompt them. But then after she did this type of planning, matching the tasks to what they could do at their independent level and thinking about what students could start and finish on their own, she said that the confidence piece was the biggest change. They weren't just completing work, but they were starting to believe that they could complete the work. Now, I do want to say something about this planning step because I know how this can feel when you look at these 5 questions. It can feel like one more thing, one more planning task on top of lesson plans and IEPs and data collection and everything else that's asked of you. So I do want to be very clear what I'm not asking you to do. You do not need a spreadsheet. I am definitely not suggesting you write a formal plan. And I'm not asking you to do this for every student individually right now. But what I would like you to do is to write down 3 skills, specific skills. That is it. 3 skills that your students need to practice. Skills where independent repetition would actually move the needle, and write them down on a sticky note. That's going to be your plan. And everything we do in the next few weeks, we talk about the materials and the organization and the routines and the teaching of the routines. It's all going to hang on those 3 skills. Because when you know what you're building towards, every other decision is just going to feel so much easier. What task boxes do I need? The ones that practice those 3 skills. How do I differentiate? By finding versions of those skills in different formats and different levels. What do I do when a task stops working? You go back to the skill, not the activity. The skill is the anchor, and the task is just going to be the vehicle. All right, so here's where we are in the series. We had our first episode last week, and today we started the tasks framework. We're going to be working through this several weeks, and then we're going to keep going. We're not going to stop there. We're going to be talking about how you can pull small groups and how you can use this for data collection. Next week, we are going to move on to A. It says access your materials, but it's really what materials you have access to. We're going to be talking about what you can use in your independent work systems before you even think about making a purchase. Most teachers are really surprised by what they already have access to. So this week's homework is simple. Write down 3 priority skills for your students' independent work, not activities, just skills. Could be IEP goals, functional skills, academic reinforcement, whatever fits your classroom. 3 skills written down somewhere where you will see them next week. That list is going to become your task selection filter and your differentiation guide all at once. We're going to use it in every episode from here forward. And if you do want to start searching for activities now, I will link the Taskbox Club in the description and the show notes, and you can start searching by skill. You can click on the link, type in what your students are working on, and the library will pull up tasks that match. That's the whole point of the system. The tasks serve the skills, not the other way around. All right. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in. I'm going to be back on Friday with a podcast at Special Educators Resource Room every week in the summer. We're going to have a Wednesday YouTube and a Friday podcast, and they are going to be on primarily the same topic, but I'm not going to be saying the exact same thing. So what I would do is watch on Wednesdays, listen on Fridays. If you are subscribed to Positively Learning on YouTube, you're going to see both of them there. They will both be there for you. And let me know what's helpful. Let me know what questions you have. Check out the links I put in the description, and I will see you here next week when we talk about letter A. Thanks so much.